Hello and welcome back to the coaching session from leadershipmentor.com. In our time together this week, I want to talk to you about leadership styles for emerging leaders. One of the challenges as a new leader is oftentimes we fall into the trap of leading in the same way all the time. So I want to talk to you today about the variables of when you would use different styles of leadership in different situations with different people. And the four styles we're going to talk about are telling, coaching, supporting, and empowering. So how do you know what style to use? Well, there's three different things you want to consider. The first is the person is going to determine the style of leadership that will be most effective. So we want to consider a lot about that person. How long have they been there? What's their job knowledge? And this will become more clear as we start to talk about each individual style. Next, we'd look at the level of knowledge and motivation of the team member as well. So you'd want to determine how much motivation and guidance does this person actually need. And then finally, the situation is going to determine the style of leadership. And what we mean by that is, if there's an urgent situation that there's no time for you to really coach and to explain things, then you're going to use a different style of leadership in that situation than you are if it's a project that has say a 6-month due date and you're able to actually go through and do some education and different things. So the situation will certainly determine which style you're going to use as well. So let's take a look at each of these styles. So the telling style of leadership is, first of all, the lowest level of leadership. And here there's no involvement of the team member. They simply listen. And it's really the least motivational form of leadership. So we simply, in this situation, in this leadership style, we simply tell the person what to do. So there's no involvement from them at all about what they think. There's no input as far as how they feel we should do it. You simply tell them what to do and they do it. So here it really relies on positional authority. And what we mean by that is the fact that if you have the title of supervisor, for example, the reason people do what you tell them to do is because you're in charge and you have that authority. So you're relying on that positional authority to tell them what to do. Communication lacks trust or knowledge, and again, because we're just telling people what to do, it really doesn't give people the sense of trust or the fact that you're leveraging their knowledge at all. It is useful, however, with new employees because new employees lack any type of knowledge and they really need a high level of direction. It is harmful, however, to use with seasoned employees. So if you have somebody that's been in their job a long time and they're very clear about what to do, and you're delegating a task that they're very familiar with, you wouldn't want to use the telling style of leadership. It is useful in emergencies, as we talked about, and the leader here obviously makes all of the decisions, so we're just simply telling them what to do. Then we move to the next level, which is the coaching style of leadership, and this is probably the most common. Here the leader is asking for input, but they still make the decisions, and that's important to clarify that with team members before you assign the task to them, that you do want their input, but you're going to have the ultimate decision on how it's done and when it's done and the approach that it's taken. The communication is two-way now. So in the telling style of leadership, it was one way. We're just simply telling them, and there's no two-way communication. Here we introduce two-way communication, and they are allowed to give us their input, their opinions, their thoughts, but we do preface that by saying we will make the final decision as the leader. This does help the employees learn how to problem solve, and it also allows the leader to understand how the employee thinks, and that's really important. That's the kind of the evolution as you start to get team members that are becoming more seasoned. You're not ready to cut them loose, but you want to learn and help to coach them on how to approach things. When should I go back and ask for help? What's their thought process? What areas did they evaluate to make a decision? So this is very much a learning style or coaching style of leadership, and this is really the most appropriate for most situations. Then we go to supporting style of leadership, and it's a very subtle difference, but here the leader is going to delegate simple tasks most often. The communication is still very two-way, but the leader here becomes more of a facilitator. So the need for two-way communication is lessened in this situation. And because this is really an evolution, if you've been coaching somebody for a while and you feel very comfortable with what they're doing and how they're doing it, and you know their thought process and how they approach things, then you would move to a supporting style of leadership. The two-way communication is still there, but is probably more infrequent. This is really, again, reserved for more senior employees, and you want to have a high level of trust. And the leader really must define expectations for communication, and that's the subtle difference, is they're not going to communicate back to you on everything, but you really need to define and make sure that they understand this is really where a threshold, for example, in a situation that you really need to engage me. And that's the challenge with leadership and when we start to delegate tasks, is that we have to have that level where there's an understanding of when to involve the leader and when you don't need to. So we always want to start with a high level of involvement and make sure that we evolved away from that so we can trust and allow really to empower our team members to function. And then the last style of leadership is not very common. This would be for somebody who's very seasoned, somebody who is very knowledgeable about the job, probably somebody who could clearly do your job as the team leader. So the employee makes decisions independent of the leader. This level is reserved for low-level important tasks. So if the outcome potentially is really not that impactful, you could use this. It's used on very experienced employees, as we mentioned, and the communication only happens when needed. And again, this is even less frequent communication than the previous style that we talked about. Have a great week.